Imagine living a life committed to wellness, even being a fitness instructor, and then learning that you need a heart transplant to save your life. That is the amazing story that you are about to hear from our guest today, who's going to inspire you in ways you never even imagined. Welcome to the Goddess Power Show. I'm Elizabeth Ann Atkins, and I interview trailblazing women who help us all boss up to live bigger, better, and bolder. I want you to meet Kristy Sidlar. She is an amazing woman. She is a heart transplant goddess. She actually had a heart transplant, and it's keeping her alive and giving her a second chance at this beautiful experience. So, Kristy, welcome to the Goddess Power Show.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Just the way we got connected, I think, is so amazing. I will let your listeners know that I'm writing a book, and it was very serendipitous how I got my way to you. But you have been a goddess in my life just by letting me see the potential of how to tell my story and how to get in front of as many people as possible. Because what I want to do through my experience is help others. And I'll talk a little bit more about how I see there are ways people can impact themselves and those around them through looking at wellness a little bit of a different way, through the journey that I've been on in the last 20 years.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So, Kristy, let's hear about you, your story, and how it evolved into you needing a heart transplant.
Yeah. I mean, it really started back in 1997. So, as you mentioned, I was a fitness instructor, yes, wearing my thong leotard in the late 90s, listening to Pump Up the Jam. And I passed out in front of my class. So can you imagine the students just watching their instructor like fold down to the floor? And I'm sure I know I hit my head hard. Found that out later. But we found out through a lot of testing, and unfortunately being told several times by doctors, oh, you probably didn't eat enough, or maybe you didn't have enough water last night, or maybe it's that time of the month and you're just stressed. And I just kept pushing because I knew there was something more wrong with me than that. So lesson one is advocate for yourself. Push your doctors. We have pretty good, sixth sense. Women do pretty good intuition, and I just wasn't going to let it go. But after several bouts of testing, and I literally like beat the treadmill test, the stress test, multiple times because I was so fit.
Hmm.
And we finally got to the point where I went into this abnormal rhythm, this arrhythmia, while I was at the hospital. So that was the first indication. Yes, something is indeed wrong. You are validated in thinking that. I was unfortunately misdiagnosed, but I at least was on the trail of them telling me, you need to cut back on your exercise. You need to take these pills, these medications, and it might actually go away as much as it came on. It could go away just as quickly. So just watch and listen to your body. Well, that's not a great message to tell a type A athlete that I was at the time.
Oh, no.
Because what I did, I listened to them for a while, and I started walking instead of running. And then I moved to the Bay Area from North Carolina. And I mean, there's just so many opportunities to be physically fit out in beautiful weather year round. So I was literally rollerblading 50 miles from San Francisco to San Jose. I was doing 100-mile bike rides. So in my mind, my body was saying, you can handle it, until it didn't. So I decided after all that, I'm like, well, what's the next thing I could do? I could train for a triathlon, because why not? That's one more box to check. And I was cresting the hill on a bike ride to the gym to swim just a few weeks before my triathlon. And I felt myself go into this rhythm. So I knew what it was. I wasn't shocked. And usually my body would convert out on its own. But after,
Wait, Kristy, when you say rhythm, was there an abnormal rhythm or what was like a flutter or AFib or what was it?
yeah, it's called ventricular tachycardia. And if you think about your heart beating atrium, ventricle, blood in, blood out, my heart, when I go into ventricular tachycardia, goes ventricle, ventricle, really fast. And whatever little bit of blood can drip in between those fast beats is what keeps me alive. And so I felt very lightheaded. I sat on my bike for a little bit. Maybe after 10, 15 minutes, I got on the street and I just sat there, and I was by myself. It's 1999. I had no cell phone. So after about 45 minutes, I at this point was lying flat, in and out of consciousness. I just assumed I was going to die. I mean, I was by myself on the side of the road, and all of a sudden I'd go black. Another cyclist came by and he called paramedics, and they came. And, I went from having no one there to all of a sudden having this big crowd of people when they had to cut my cycling jersey open. And there I was for the world to see, but they had to put the defibrillator pads on me to be able to shock my heart back into normal rhythm. So
Oh my gosh.
I will never forget this paramedic. He was scared to death because here's the seemingly fit, it was literally my 31st birthday. So the seemingly fit 31-year-old woman who he's about to shock. And if you think about it in the movies and TV, when you're shocking someone, they're dead. So here I was alive, and he's knowing he's going to hurt me because the shock is intense. So he said, I'm going to give you some Valium, but this is really going to hurt. And he obviously gave me too much because A, I felt nothing. And B, when I was done, I was obviously so drugged up. I looked at him and said, great, can I ride my bike home?
Love it.
No, you can't. So that led into multiple visits to the hospital to figure out what was really wrong with me. And I was finally, after about 10 days in the hospital, diagnosed with a disease called arrhythmogenic right ventricular cardiomyopathy. And essentially what that means is my right ventricle is just, it's diseased, or it was, because spoiler alert, I got a new heart, but my old heart was diseased, and the right ventricle, instead of looking like a healthy muscle, basically looked like a sponge, and it got more and more porous, more and more thin, and more enlarged over time. So when they diagnosed me with this condition, the worst thing you can tell an athlete is this condition gets worse with exercise, and you need to completely change your lifestyle.
Wow. Train what?
Training is out of the question.
Oh.
So that was a hard
Wow.
pill to swallow. And for the most part, I tried to follow the doctor's orders. I did at one point think, how bad can this really be? Went to the gym, got on the treadmill, noticed that the woman next to me was at least 10 years older than me. My competitive spirit kicked in. I started pressing up on the treadmill. She's not going to run faster than me. I went into tachycardia. I passed out. I flew off the treadmill into the mirror behind me.
Oh.
We all determined after that it was time to start walking and doing yoga. So I finally listened to my doctors, but that was pretty early on. That was still probably year one. And 20 years goes by, and I could talk about all the crazy things that happened in 20 years. But for the most part, I was very conscientious of what my doctors were telling me. I knew that intense exercise would make my disease even worse. But I also knew that at some point, this disease was going to require me to have a heart transplant. So I would ultimately go into heart failure, which is, it's not what it sounds like. I'm not dying. I'm not having a heart attack, but your heart is beginning to fail. And so where the blood pumping mechanisms become harder because now my heart is enlarged, my wall is thin, it's not working efficiently. So I'm not pumping blood and fluids through my body properly. So when I was actually living in Asia at the time, traveling a lot all over the continents in that region, and particularly when I would fly, I would sometimes get off the plane and I'd look down and I did not recognize my feet. They were swollen. My ankles were swollen. I could barely carry my suitcase, roll it through the airport because I just didn't have that heart function.
Wow.
So we knew it was getting worse. And then when I moved back to the United States, that's when I really saw a pretty big turning point. That it was, walking from my car in the parking lot to the front of my office was very difficult. So I was referred from my regular cardiologist to a advanced heart failure, heart transplant specialist. So we knew it was heading in that direction. And I think it's shocking for people to hear, oh my gosh, my best friend's about to have a heart transplant, or my daughter's going to have a heart transplant. But I think, I've known this was coming, and, we can all relate to situations in our life. Something gets so bad, whether it's a relationship or a job or a travel schedule, that you just think, gosh, if I can just get on the other side of this, I will be so much better and so much happier. So my mindset was not, let's be scared, I'm getting a heart transplant. That sounds terrifying. It was, oh my gosh, I'm going to have a new life. I'm going to have a new outlook. I'm going to have the ability to do things that I didn't do or couldn't do for those last 20 years. So for me, it
Mm.
was a very positive thing. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It wasn't like I didn't think about it a lot and I didn't stress about some of the things that could come of it. But I will say, once we got closer to the process, honestly, my biggest concern, there were probably two, but my biggest two concerns were one, worrying about everybody else who's going to be worrying about me during that 10 hours that I'm out. I'm out. I don't know what's happening. I know I'm going to be fine because I knew my medical team was great. But it was those 10 hours of knowing everybody else was going to be stressing out. And that really bothered me. And then the second was just, I thought recovery was going to be terribly painful and I thought it was going to be long. And both of those things actually turned out really, really well. So I can
Wow.
about that. But once I got to the point of knowing it was going to happen, we just started to go down that path and everybody wrapped their heads around it.
Okay, Kristy, let's rewind just a little bit because you look amazing. I would never look at you and think you had any health issues. So, what is it like to be on a list? Like, how long does it take to get be on a heart transplant list? Because clearly, someone has to die to donate their heart for your help for you.
Yeah.
So, what is the how long? How does that work?
Well, there's probably the normal case, and then there's the Kristy Sidlar case. So let me tell you how that works. When you're getting to the point where you should be on the list, at least in the case of Henry Ford, your case gets presented to a board, a transplant board, and they review it.
Oh, Henry Ford Health System in Detroit.
Henry Ford Health System in Detroit, Michigan, and I'm telling
Okay.
you, I wish I could give a long, shameful plug for them, but it was amazing. But when they do that, they look at all my records. And I had up until that point, probably 5 or 6 months of testing. And it wasn't just cardiac testing. They need to make sure I don't have cancer. I don't have HIV, that I've had, that I don't have some weird dental cancer, because they don't want to give a heart to someone who can misuse it by having something else wrong with them.
Mhm.
So they go to this board and they review all of the cases. And some of the team had seen me face to face. And I know you didn't meet me before my transplant, but it didn't look all that different than I do now. I was still looking relatively healthy, although very limited in some of the things I could do. And several of the transplant doctors said, this woman has got to be on the list as soon as possible because my heart, I didn't know at the time how big it was, but was enormous. One of them even said, I don't know how she can walk down the hall.
Oh my goodness.
Just by looking
Wow.
at the chart, not by looking at me. So
Uh-huh.
I was going to go on the list. So normally what happens when you go on the list, you're rated criteria 1 to 5. And 1 is you are in the hospital, you're in critical condition, you are on some kind of assist device to either pump your heart, or second is just a bit below. You're not as critical, but you are in the hospital and you have something very severe. Third is you need 2 organ transplants. And fourth is you need it, but you're at home and you're living your life. I would have gone on 4. So it could have, in a normal situation, could have been weeks, could have been months, could have been a year, because they have to match my blood type and my size. And there aren't a lot of heart transplant patients who are more small framed females, a lot of larger men, unfortunately. So the good news, bad news is if a heart became available of my size, I would probably be pretty high on the list. But like you said, I have to wait for somebody to die that has
Yeah.
the same frame as me. So
Right. Wow.
in my case, we got me on the list because I was about to go on anyway, but I had a really bad weekend of being in tachycardia and went to the doctor. They did an EKG, immediately sent me across the street to the hospital, had me in ICU that night. I was on the list the next day. I had a heart donated the following day. It was in my chest the following day. This was a 2-day
What?
process.
Wow, that's amazing. Oh
Just
my
that way.
gosh.
I mean, I was
Wow.
so incredibly fortunate, because to your question about what's it like being on the list, that was another concern of mine, was what, like, every day do I have to wake up and think, is this the day? Did I get this done? Did I tell this person I love them? To go through. And I just had such a truncated process that piece of the puzzle, which I think is probably really hard for a lot of transplant patients. I didn't have to deal with that element. I got very, very
That's
lucky.
amazing, Kristy. Okay, so you said the surgery and the recovery. Well, first of all, when was your surgery?
It was March 11th
Of this year.
of this year.
So just a few months ago. That's remarkable.
Yeah.
So you wake up from surgery and what was your first thought?
So my first couple of days were a little fuzzy, and honestly, it's still to this day fun. My husband and I will have conversations, and he has to fill in the blanks for me.
Uh-huh.
I did tell him, and he said, "I know you're." I said, "I can't believe you're asking me to do this," but I asked him. I said, "When you see me for the first time, please take a picture of me lying in that hospital bed with the ventilator tube and the tracheal tube and the port and the IVs and the drainage tubes." And he did. So I saw that for the first time about a month ago. I just didn't really want to look at it, but poor him had to see that. So my first memory was probably, well, it was the first day because it was when they took my tubes out. And funny story with this, they were saying to me, okay, I needed to be alert because they needed to give me instruction, but they gave me some morphine. And the doctor said, all right, I want you to count to 3. You're going to take in a deep breath. We're going to pull the tube out at the time that you exhale. So it was count to 3, hold your breath, exhale. I could not get that instruction for the life of me. And I must have asked him to say that to me 5 times. So that's my first memory, was not being able to follow directions very well.
But you had a tube down your throat?
We had, yeah, ventilator and a tracheal tube. So they got those out, and they, eventually all these other tubes came out of me. But so that was really my first memory. And I'll tell you, one of the most special memories was a couple of days after I was really more alert. I hadn't seen my mom, who lives in Florida, for 475 days. And
What?
COVID, we had each other. So the first time I got to see her was when she walked into the hospital. And fortunately, I was not as tubed up as I think it probably could have been a shock to her. But that was a very, very special memory, was when my mom walked in the room.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing. So you
Another
had this.
goddess in my life is my mom, for sure.
Oh, that's amazing. Beautiful. I bet she's so happy now that you're well. And
Yes.
so what's the recovery been like?
The recovery has been much easier than I thought. I actually got out of the hospital in 8 days, and it's typically about 14. Uh,
Wow.
so again, I went into this relatively
Yeah.
healthy,
Yeah.
and I think the doctors were pretty amazed with how quickly I was able to get out. The first couple of days were, obviously, I was very low key, but I'm not you can probably tell from my energy level, I'm not a sit still kind of person. So I think it was like day 3, I was in the kitchen helping make dinner. As much as my husband and my mom were saying, sit down, I couldn't. The next day I kind of paid for that. So I learned how to pace things.
Okay.
But I was, cardiac rehab within, I think, probably 6 weeks. And that was 3 days a week. And, they were monitoring my cardiac output. And I really actually recovered quite quickly. And I would have probably been back to work within the 3-month time frame. But I did pick up a virus that's pretty common for heart transplant patients. So I wound up back in the hospital, and I was kind of 3 weeks behind in my rehab. So I had a little bit of a setback. But I'm amazed at how well my recovery went, but B, I'm floored at how I feel. Like I do things like yesterday, I ran up the stairs, and I thought, I haven't run upstairs in 15 years. And I forgot how exhilarating it can be.
Oh, wow.
It's just things like that I'm a normal person again. And, I really, truly do every day. I thank this family for this thing that is now
Wow.
not just keeping me alive, but making me the person I've wanted to be for 20 years. I mean, I literally did an interval running workout Sunday night for 28 minutes and ran for a minute and walked for a minute, and I felt fine. And I asked if this was an 18-year-old boy's track runner's heart, because I felt pretty darn good.
Oh my gosh, that's just overwhelming. Wow.
So I do not know what is in me. They can't technically tell me for a year what the age and the sex of the heart is, unless the family chooses to come forward. And I did write them a letter about a week after I got out of the hospital, which, other than probably my wedding vows, and I haven't had to write them yet, but my parents' eulogies, probably the most thoughtful, tough letter I've ever had to write, but so meaningful. And it's now up to them if they choose to let me know a little bit more about the donor.
Wow, because that family's tragedy gave you the gift of life. That is so overwhelming. I'm going to cry. But let's move. That's so incredible. So, Kristy, you are using this experience in a really positive, powerful way in many ways. You're a speaker, you're writing a book, you work with the American Heart Association for all kinds of things. So, can you talk about how this book and your experience is providing an impetus for inspiring other people?
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, again, partly because I've had so much input from others about the reason they think my recovery has gone so well is because of how I went into it and my outlook and the way I look at some different dimensions of wellness. So it really came to a head for me when I got home from the hospital, and I thought, I've been so well supported and I have this wonderful social network. And here I've got, two incredible family members who would do anything for me right now. I had obviously had, a physical aspect to how I went into the surgery. I've got a strong understanding of nutrition. I'm a disciplined person. And I actually had a moment of sadness when I thought about some of the other patients that were in the rooms adjacent to mine, having this sense that they're going to probably go home to a family that's not as supportive, and they're probably going to go back to eating pizza, and who cares if they smoke? Well, now they've got a new heart, so let's smoke with the new heart. And it just made me realize that I want to take what I've learned and the way I've lived my life without being preachy, because that's so ineffective, but being able to say, I learned these things in my life, and whether you take one of them or 12 of them, there's a way for you to be able to improve aspects of your life to make you not only live longer, but to feel better and to have a positive impact on people around you. Because who wants a grumpy, undisciplined, complaining person because they have to eat a salad? I wanted to take this and bottle it up and put it in a way that I think could be a teaching mechanism to people to maybe just tweak or turn on an element of whether it's physical wellness or emotional wellness or spiritual wellness or, even financial wellness, to make that experience in their life and people around them something that's going to be worth living for.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So can you talk about what you do with the American Heart Association?
Yeah, I am the board chair for the Southeast Michigan Heart Association board. And really what we're trying to do is help advocate for policy change. So, vaping has been a big thing, and Detroit has the worst numbers in the country for blood pressure. So we're trying to help some of the local communities have better access to blood pressure cuffs and how to improve their blood pressure. And so, a lot of what I'm doing is outreach to the community, but probably the biggest part that I've done for the last 20 years is just speaking, trying to help particularly women understand the health risks. 1 in 3 women die of heart disease,
Mm.
and 80% of all heart incidents are preventable just through lifestyle changes. So
Wow.
get that message out to make somebody realize that if they just walked, a few more minutes a day or a few more steps a day, maybe cut back on some of their fats. So those are some of the things that I'm trying to do just for an awareness and education perspective.
I love it. And women's empowerment is very important for you, including the work that you do during the day. So can you talk about that too, Kristy, please?
Yeah, for just a moment, I work for a company called the Mom Project. And the company was founded 5 years ago when our CEO and founder was on maternity leave, and she realized how many women leave the workforce. There was a statistic she read: 43% of mothers don't go back to work because it's not conducive to them being able to raise their family or
Wow.
flexibility. Or so she started this company where we've now grown to 500,000, mostly moms, but men, women, caregivers, who want to work for companies who get the fact that we are going to have a more productive workforce if we treat the people who are in it for them to be able to balance their work and their life and not have to sacrifice career or motherhood.
Mhm.
So it's just been an amazing experience. And we work with some of the biggest companies like Google and Facebook. We might work with your doctor's office down the street, who just understand that being able to have these women that have great skill sets want to either re-enter the workforce or work for a company that's more flexible and gets their needs. So it's a wonderful
Yeah.
mission.
Yes. Wow. That's so awesome. So, Kristy, can you talk about what's next for your future? Your book, your speaking? What's your vision?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have such a big influence on this. This is my first book. And when I first started talking about writing a book, I thought I wrote a book and I put it on Amazon and I waited for the money to come in.
Ah!
And I'm not even writing it for the financial reasons I really want to help people. But, I think through talking with you, I realized that there's so many ways to be able to pull in people that can help me share this important message. So I've already lined up now 8 speakers to help me through the journey of these dimensions of wellness, and how, not just through my book, but through the network that I have, to be able to say, here's a way to focus on your spiritual wellness, or here's a way to look at your vocations and your hobbies to make you more fulfilled. So I definitely have some dates that I'm working on lining those speakers up between now and the book launch, which we are looking at the National Wear Red Day on February 4th of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
Your great suggestion. And then in the meantime, I do have a speaking engagement with another charity board that I'm on called Project Beautiful, Inside and Out. It's a Detroit-based organization.
Oh,
And we're doing a speaker series, and I'm going to be doing that on August 8th in Troy, Michigan. So
beautiful.
that's my next one. I'll definitely give you some more details.
Oh, that's amazing. Kristy, how can people contact you if they want to learn more?
Well, I have a very inactive Instagram page that, because of what you have shared with me, that I need to get more robust.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But I think for right now, probably, I mean, I can certainly give you my email address. That's the best way to contact me right now until I get some
Okay,
social media.
great. I'll put it in the description box in case anybody wants to invite you to speak or learn more about your story, or perhaps, invite you to a support group to speak or something like that. Seems like support groups for families who are waiting might love to hear from you.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously we can do anything through Zoom, and it doesn't have to be in person. So I'm
Yeah.
however.
I am so inspired by you and your story and your mission. And is there any last message that this experience has taught you that you'd like to share?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's probably 2 things. One is that I have been a very independent person all my life. And I think I've realized that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to reach out and accept help, which has been hard for me to do. And then I think the other thing, and we didn't get too deep into this, but I think the other big lesson that I learned in all of this is, I've always had body image issues. It's been a problem for me since college. It's gotten much, much, much better in my older age, but because of some of the medications I'm on, and I take 26 pills a day. It's down from 32 2 months ago, so I'm making progress.
Oh my gosh.
But some of the medications I take have made it's called moon face. It's made my face fatter. I've got a distribution of fat in places in my body that I was not used to. And it's actually been such a blessing to be able to say, you know what, Kristy, let it go. I can't do anything about it. Sure, I hate looking at myself on camera. I'm like, oh, my face doesn't really normally look like that. I feel like I need to apologize. Or I'm not getting in a bikini anymore. Oh, darn. But it's been so liberating for me. And I think I've just learned that that's another kind of aspect of this that I'd like to be able to help people through. I'm no psychologist by any means, but experientially, I think I have a perspective that, like, it's okay. We as women stress about that way too much. I've spent so much energy in my life worrying about it. And that was a big, big lesson for me.
So is it that you're grateful to be alive with a fully functioning body so that if you don't look like you used to look in a bikini, it's okay? Is that what that is? The
Yeah,
message is?
that's a good portion of it. I think the other part of it is just kind of mentally and emotionally, and from a self-esteem perspective. Um, I'm okay. Like, I don't have to worry about it. I could have gotten to a point where I would look down at my belly and think, oh my gosh, it's not flat as a washboard. And now I'm like, I'm sorry, but this is my new body and I have to accept it. And to your point, I've got a whole new lease on life. And
Yes.
this to me is so much more important than, darn, I can't wear that, my favorite bikini anymore. Not to mention I have a scar here and 3 scars here and a scar here. And I mean, but it to me, scars are stories. And that took me a while to understand that a scar is not a bad thing. It's a reminder of this, really, for me, in my case, a second chance at life.
Oh my gosh, that gives me chills, Kristy. That's amazing. But your perspective on this is so powerful because as the fitness instructor wearing the thong, obviously if you're wearing that, you must be super fit. You're leading the class. You must have looked amazing. And the mindset around all of that is like, I work out because it feels good, but I also look awesome. And you have the athletic tone. And then to be able to that's huge on top of all the women's mindset, body image stuff that we deal with throughout our lives. So I love that message. I hope that you amplify that a lot and say, listen, we should just be grateful that we have a fully functioning body and stop having these impossible standards that really don't matter. Just look at how your body works and be amazed at this machine that enables us to experience life.
Yeah. And I think as long as I completely agree with all, it's such a powerful summary of that message. And I think the and to that is, and take care of it. Like
Yes.
there is that component that we do still have an obligation to our bodies and to our healthcare system and to our families. I mean, all of these things to be healthy, but do it because you want to be healthy, not because I need to make sure that when I walk out to that pool, I'm not trying to be somebody else's standard of what I should look like.
Kristy, that is so awesome. So awesome. And I think your next book should be called Scars Are Stories.
Volume 2.
That's so cool. Awesome, Kristy. Thank you so much for sharing your story here on the Goddess Power Show.
I am so pleased that you invited me. This is the thrill of my week. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I just adore you. So thank you. And I wish you the absolute best in everything.
Thank you. You as well.
You're welcome. And thank you all of you for watching because Kristy Sidlar truly is a goddess. She has a new heart. She has a new lease on life, and she has powerful messages for all of us to take care of our bodies, our minds, our spirits, and be powerful contributors to the world in ways that inspire others. So please, if you want to invite her to speak, I'm going to put her email address in the description box. You can get in touch with her. And meanwhile, please give us a thumbs up for the show, like the show, and subscribe to the channel. And also hop over to twosisterswriting.com and order your copy of my new book, The BISS Tribe, Activating Your Goddess Power, which is my prescription for living a super empowered life in mind, body, and spirit. You can also follow me on Twitter at Elizabeth Atkins. And remember, boss up, goddess. You have the power. I'll see you next time.